So, Spark the Future, welcome to Ignite. Everybody enjoying the show so far? Yes? Cool. So, my name is Jeff Fritz. I am a senior program manager with Microsoft on the ASP.NET team, the web platform team, the Azure developer experience team. We build web stuff, okay? So, my job is to get you interested in Azure, show you the cool things that we can do with ASP.NET on Azure, but I want to make sure that you know the things that we're going to do here today with ASP.NET on Azure, you can also do with other web technologies. But the focus of this talk is ASP.NET. We still love all of our friends who use Node.js and PHP, Ruby on Rails, but we're going to focus on ASP.NET in this talk. So, quickly, some assumptions. I'm assuming that you're familiar with ASP.NET structures and concepts, okay? I'm going to show a little bit around MVC and how that works, how we're going to take advantage of optimizing things in Razor markup. I'm not assuming you have any knowledge of network stack, VPN, how to configure those things. I'm assuming you don't have any knowledge of hardware and software configuration. I'm not going to be touching on that kind of thing, nor server configuration, okay? Not going to go into that. But I am going to assume that you've got a connection to Azure, and that when you go back to your organization, when you go home, you're going to be able to connect in and work with it at some level. But above all, bottom line, if you're familiar with ASP.NET and you're comfortable as a developer with ASP.NET, you're going to be good in this session, okay? Does anybody have an aversion to code? There was a technical analyst at Build last week who said there's way too much code in these keynotes. It's a developer conference. So, all right. Before I get in and start talking about Azure and all the cool things that we can do with it, I want to introduce the sample application that I'm going to run through and build on top of throughout this conversation that we have here today, okay? So, very simple application. It's a photo album that I've built for Ignite. Very simple. I have it running here locally on my Surface Pro. Let's take a look at it and see how easy and how simple a photo album is in ASP.NET. So I'm going to change connection. All right. So here I am in Visual Studio 2013. I'm going to bounce a little bit back and forth between 2013 and 2015 because some of the tooling in 2015, RC, is really cool for Azure. But for the most part, I'm going to stay in 2013, so it's stuff that you're familiar with and comfortable with using today in a production environment. So here in 2013, I have a project called Local Web. And I've got a controller in it that will get images. And all it's going to do is reach into my local photos folder on disk, bring up all the files that are in that folder, and return them to my Razor view that will paint them in HTML to be presented to my visitors. Okay, I'm using a little bit of Bootstrap markup here so that I get a responsive look and feel, so that if somebody comes through with their tablet or their phone, it'll feel right. It'll be right-sized on their device, okay? So that's why you see some of the classes hanging out there. All right, so let me run this, and let's take a quick look at what I have here. Now I've loaded up a couple photos into my initial folder from pictures I took around the conference floor, around the sponsor floor, yesterday morning, yesterday afternoon, and here I am. So I've got this simple set. Hang on. Wrong website. Let's run the correct one. Set as startup. There we go. Nearly gave away the ending. So we're going to see a couple things here. This is a simpler website, and all I've done is I've laid photos out on disk, and I'm loading them up and I'm painting them on screen, okay? Very simple, no processing. There's nothing going on behind the scenes. These are just links to files on disk, okay? Pretty generic, pretty vanilla. And I can click on these, and it'll open up and show me the full size image. Okay? Not bad. But if I try and do that on a phone, it's going to get a little unwieldy. All right? But something that is difficult about this type of approach, see how slow that is to load? Did you catch it? Let me bring up the developer tools and show you, because there's something that happens here that's a little bit weird, and I want to make sure you understand what's going on. So let me do a reload. See it loading there? Check out my graph over here. It loads about 6 images at a time, and then it stops. And then it loads 6 images more, and then it stops. While it's loading those, the browser can only handle 6 queries to the same domain at a time. So it makes it 6 requests, and it waits for them all to download. And then it makes 6 more requests, and it waits for them all to download. Okay? And you can see these are full-size images. Check out the size of those photos. 2-point-some meg each. And that's coming off of my little Samsung Galaxy phone. Okay? So I'm taking up a lot of bandwidth, but it's only on my local PC here. And I'm sending these down, and I have the browser putting it down in thumbnail form, resizing it all for me on the client PC. Now, if you've got a lot of power on that PC, great. But if I load up a couple hundred of these photos at 2-point-some meg apiece, suddenly my browser is pushing around hundreds of meg of images, and it's going to start to grind to a halt. Okay? So a couple of problems around this, but as far as something that's running on my local network as a development thing, as something to try out, not bad. Okay? It works. It does its thing. But when I want to share that with my friends, I want to make this available to the rest of my organization. Okay? And I'm using photos here because it's something simple that I think we can all can relate to. But your organization might be doing something where you're scanning in documents, right? You're receiving faxes, you need to scan them in and workflow process them. Or maybe you're selling product and you have sales receipts that you need to manage and process and workflow. Okay? I'm using photos because it's simple, but this could be any number of other business processes that we're talking about. So there's a little bit about what we're going to work through and optimize and make available on the web. So let me close out of here. I'll leave that maximized, and I'm going to go back to my slides. So when we talk about the Azure Web Service, we're talking about really a container within the Azure App Services. And this is something that we just introduced in the last 2 or 3 months, where we now have 4 different types of apps that you can create in Azure. We have web apps, mobile logic apps, mobile apps, and API apps. And I've laid out the diagram like this because the top 3 kind of build on what's available inside of API apps. Okay? So let me go through and explain what each one of these is quickly. First one is web apps. Now, web apps were formerly called Azure websites. Okay, you may have heard that term before. Everybody know what I mean when I say Azure websites? Okay, so all that we've done is rename it. All right, that's the big thing that you need to know is we renamed it. We renamed the web hosting plan to an app hosting plan because really you want to do more than just host HTML and CSS on these things. You want to do processing. You want to have an application that runs, that takes advantage of all that horsepower we have out there. Okay? So if you have websites that are out there before the great rename to web app, they're still there. They're still running. They just have a different title in front of them. Okay? The next one is mobile apps. So formerly we had these things, Azure Mobile Services, where you could do all kinds of things with push notifications and data storage. Well, that really felt like it was short on a couple things. So we've added a number of features to these, and we've brought it in line with what is a web app. So now you can have integration with your services that are running on-prem or out in the cloud. Okay? Because you can do all the cool network integration stuff that's available on Azure. I'm not going to get into that today. That's really complex, and the IT folks have that down cold. I want to talk about the development pieces here. Staging slots. Inside websites, we have this concept of staging slots that now you can do with your data storage and other options inside of Azure Mobile Services in mobile apps. Okay? Web jobs. We're going to take a deep look at web jobs when we get further into the demos here today. But you can now run jobs against your mobile services. And scaling. Yeah, we had a data repository out there that you couldn't scale. That's funny. How are we going to do that? Now you can. All right? We didn't migrate your mobile services immediately to mobile apps. Okay? There's a process out there for it that you can look at when you log on and look at your mobile services on the Azure portal, and it'll give you directions how to make this migration. The next one, the new one that I really think is cool, is Logic Apps. Now this is a new app type, and it helps to automate data access in the cloud. This is going to make those data flows that you need to do to push data from point A to point B so easy, even your manager can do it. I'm serious. We tested it. We've got plenty of managers at Microsoft. So there's a visual designer that you can use to compose these business processes. It feels BizTalk-ish, okay? But we're going to give you the ability to put API apps together to be able to talk and accomplish some sort of a goal, okay? So you can see there are a couple of examples that you may want to use to automate actions, right? Anybody use if this, then that, IFTTT.com, or maybe Zapier? Okay, I see a couple people, maybe less than 5% of the room, maybe. Okay, so these are two websites that you can go to and you can log in with your Facebook account or your Twitter account or Dropbox account or OneDrive account, and you can automate interactions between your social media services and your Office 365 services. And you personally can make some interesting things happen, okay? For example, I have every time somebody posts a picture of me on Facebook, it automatically gets downloaded for me and put it in my OneDrive. Easy. Then I have copies of every picture people put up on Facebook of me. I'm not vain, I'm just paranoid. So, and what really kills me is when people put pictures up, they tag it as me and it's my kid. So, anyways. So we've seen, these are a couple of the things we can do. I'm not going to get into API apps yet. We're going to talk about API apps later as part of the demo. We're going to take a look at how to build an API app so we can make an API for our application. But I want to show you the Azure portal. Okay, the new Azure portal. I want to review how we can create apps, what resource groups are out there for us, and how some of these things kind of fit together. Okay? So let's go back over to my demo machine. So I've already logged on. Here's the portal. All right, there's a lot going on here. We've totally embraced the tile look. It's modern, it's Windows, it's square. Okay? And I've got a bunch of different things here that I've pinned to my home screen on the Azure portal. Now, I've got a bunch of actions down the left side that I can do. I've got my status here in the middle of the status of the entire Azure service, okay? I can see when things are having problems there. And I can see here's information to jump into my blog. Here's the resource group for my blog. And I've got a couple other things here to help me manage my demo resources for here today. Let me show you how easy it is to set up a new web app here on the portal. So new button in the bottom left corner. And I've got some recently used items down here at the bottom, things that I've recently created. But I can jump into this web and mobile option, and I've already got web app, mobile app, logic app, and API app right off the top. Okay? That's all you need to do. Click in, and then I can choose web app, and then I can start configuring what do you want it to be named, what size do you want it to be, okay? So let's just call this demo at Ignite, and I'm going to change my service plan. Let's just create a new one. Demo at Ignite. And then I can choose my pricing tier. How much compute do you want to start? So it gives us a couple of options to get started. It'll load the pricing and give you that information on the bottom. So, and then I can say, where do I want it located? I'm sorry, what resource group? So the resource group is a collection of resources, right? App resources that'll work together, preferably in the same location, so you can start and stop them together. And then which one of our data centers do you want this to run out of? I'm running all of our demos today, I believe, out of Central US, which is in the Chicago area. Okay? So I'm not actually going to go through and start that because I've got plenty of resources built for us here today. So that's how you can get things started in the portal. Now, we can do a lot of these same things from within Visual Studio as well. All right? So from Visual Studio, it's actually pretty much the same thing in 2013 and 2015. I can go in, and for my website here, I can right-click, and I can say Publish, just like you would if you were publishing to one of your web servers. And because I'm logged in to Visual Studio with an Azure account, I can now say, yes, I want to publish a new Azure web app. And I can select one of my existing web apps that I've already got associated with my subscription, or I can say new. And I can give it a new name, Demo at Ignite. Choose my subscription. Some people have multiple subscriptions, personal, office, different things there that might be associated with your account. The service plan that you want it to run with, I'll put it here. It'll start off in a certain region. I don't need a database. Go. It's going to allocate the space for me, and I can then publish my content, load all of my HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all my DLLs onto that web server right here from within Visual Studio. Easy, okay? And really, we want to make sure that you as developers are able to get your stuff online, get it running quickly. Here's all my connection information. It actually downloaded this from Azure, right? It did a handshake while it was setting up the web app, and it downloaded the appropriate publication information. I can then choose which configuration do I want, debugger release, other file publication information. Do I want to remove the additional files, pre-compile, or exclude the app data? And then it will show me a preview, and then I can publish. I'm not going to publish because I've got plenty of other things already out there for us running. Let me go back to the slides, and I want to talk about now some of the things that we want to do to start making this web application run better. Okay? So the first thing is web jobs. So Azure Web Jobs are an executable that you put out there in the cloud that will run a task or a collection of tasks, okay? You can run it on demand, on a schedule, or continuously with some sort of a trigger that'll fire those functions for you. And we have all different types of executable files that you can use as the basis for your web job, okay? Of course, we'd love for you to use an exe, a command file, or a bat file, but we do love our friends who use PHP, Python, JavaScript, and even Java jars, okay? But once again, I'm going to focus on ASP.NET, .NET development, and really, we're going to be able to build this Azure Web Job as a console application. It's going to be easy for us to set up and run, and if you've written console applications before, you should be very comfortable with this type of experience. So for my demo here, for my photo site, I want to be able to resize those pictures coming in. They were 2.5 meg. That's too big for me to put on that main screen for thumbnails. So I want to make some thumbnails, and I want to put a maximum size on those pictures that I deliver from my website. So I'm going to resize to a thumbnail and resize to, let's call it full size, but it's really the most that I'm going to ship from my photo website, okay? So I'm going to use web jobs for that when we get back to the demo. And those files, those images, I'm going to put into Azure Storage. Now there's 4 types of Azure Storage: blob, table, queue, and file. File's kind of in preview right now, and it's kind of built on top of some of these other ones. But I want to focus on blob. Okay? Blob is just a binary large object that hangs out there at some HTTP endpoint that we can access. Okay? A table is very much like a SQL table with a key, but with a blob of details that go along with that. Okay? You can't exactly query it too well on those other attributes. And a queue is a queue. You can load stuff into the queue, and stuff will come out on a first come, first served basis. All right? First in, first out. Right? You can load things into your Azure storage through Stream APIs in .NET. Very easy to use. If you've been pushing things around the file system with Stream APIs, you should be very comfortable with how to work with Azure storage. I love the last item. You can replicate these things locally and geographically. So when you first set up a storage account, you'll get 3 copies in your local data center. So each time I upload a picture, it makes 2 backups locally. So if something happens to one of those storage repositories on my data center, the other 2 are there to back up. Cool. And then I can replicate geographically so that when my friends out in Australia request it, well, it's coming from a data center in Southeast Asia instead of from Chicago. Shipping 2.5 meg from Chicago to Australia is going to take a little bit of time. It's going to be a bad experience. Right? Okay. Follow along with me. Here we go. Let's start writing some code to upload and resize those photos. Okay? Where are we at? Fantastic. So, I've already started with a website hanging out here where I've taken my home controller and in my index now, instead of going and getting my files off of disk, I'm going to go get thumbnail blobs. I only want to serve thumbnails when I request a page. So let me put together the read operation to go get those thumbnails out of my Azure storage. Not that one. There we go. So I have a method here that's going to grab my storage connection string. So I've already allocated storage on Azure. Okay, this is very easy to do through the portal. There's a new button and you say storage and it'll allocate storage for me. There's storage account information hanging out there. Let me show you where that lives. When I'm looking at my storage account here, I can see on this last, we call these blades, each one of these columns that pop up in the Azure portal. In the last blade that appears, after I look at my keys, I have my connection string and my access keys. Okay? You need those pieces of information to connect. So I take that information and I put it in Configuration Manager so I can grab it, in my web config so I can grab that, and I create a storage account. I then need to create a blob client. I want to get these things out of a blob, so I need to create a client to access that. And then I say, grab for me a reference to the container called thumbnail. So inside of blob storage, we effectively have folders called containers. Okay? Pretty simple association to make. So I've created a container out there called thumbnail. And there it is. Okay? So inside there, I'm going to pull out the list of thumbnails so I can paint them on screen. I get back, when I ask for a list of blobs, I get back a collection of URIs that I'm going to select because I need to send down to the client the appropriate location, HTTP location, to pull that image. Make sense? Okay. So that's how I'm going to get thumbnails. I pass them back, and then my view, my index view, it's the same for loop to go through and just output the thumbnails on screen. All right? Now, when I created those containers, I also created one called full. Now, these are the two that I'm actually going to be reading from, and I'm going to allow anonymous access to. Anybody who has the name of a blob inside there, because they're going to get it from my website, they're going to be allowed to read that and paint it on screen. There's 3 different access models to the blob. There they are. Private, which means no anonymous access. Nobody who has a URI that references that container is allowed to see anything inside of it. And that's good because those raw files that I upload, I don't want anybody to get those 2.5 meg files, right? I'm the only one that's going to operate on those. So I'm going to put a private container out there for my upload, where I put the raw files. I then have the full container. That one I want people to be able to access and pull down just the blobs anonymously. So I use the blob type of storage. The last one, container, that's like turning on directory browsing capabilities on your folder, right? If somebody browses to /full and it was marked as container security access, they'd be able to see everything, right? The complete list of here's all the files that are in the container. I don't really want that because I don't want people to browse it. I want them to come through my UI so I can control things a little bit. So that's how we can define these blob containers. And that's how I'm going to read from them. Now, I'm going to give people the ability to upload. So I put together a simple upload page that has, there it is, an input type. An input type file that will accept images, and then I put this capture equals camera on there. What that does is it says if you're a mobile phone and you have a camera on your device, when you click into this file input, activate the camera, right? Because if I want people to upload photos, I'd really like them to be able to take a picture and upload it. So I've got that there, and I've got a progress bar that I've defined using standard Bootstrap component markup. And then I wrote a little bit of JavaScript down here that says here's how we're actually going to do the upload with a little bit of Ajax. Okay? Don't need to worry about the exact syntax of this code. I'm going to give you links to all the source code at the end of the session. Okay? So don't worry about scribbling furiously or taking pictures of source code. You're going to get access to all this, okay? So easy upload page, but how do I actually write that stuff into my blob storage? Let me go back to the controller and show you that upload method. So this is the HTTP post version of the upload. So when I post that file back, this method is going to be called. So I've got a couple checks up front to say, is upload enabled? If it isn't, reject people. You're not allowed to send this up. If somebody sends something that's not an image, reject that too. And then I have a couple trace statements just so I can log and see what's going on. And then I've got this very appropriately named method, upload to blob. Once again, get storage account. So get information about my Azure storage account, create a blob client, get the container reference for my upload container, and now to make sure that my file names are unique and I don't overwrite things, I grab the time and the file name that was uploaded, and I put those two together so that that's the name of the file that I save. Helps a little bit with the uniqueness without putting a GUID out there, which everybody loves reading GUIDs, right? So, yeah, okay. So you're with me on that one. I get a reference to the blob that I'm going to store this in, and then here I just do stream processing. Grab the photo, the file that was posted, the input stream from that, right? So this is the stream of bytes that were uploaded to my web server, and let's upload that into the Azure blob. Set the content type appropriately, done. Makes sense. Pretty garden variety upload type of interaction, right? People have seen uploads like this before when you're saving to your local storage, right? Makes sense, saving to your local disk. It's the same type of operation, it's just we threw a cloud in the middle. Okay, fine. The next piece, now that we have this uploaded and in a blob out there in Azure Storage, is how do we generate those thumbnails? How do we generate those full-size images that I want to present? So I've written a web job, and it's down here. We've put templates together to help you make web jobs very, very easily. So if you say File, New Project, actually let me do that as an add so it doesn't close my solution. And underneath, in my case, C#, because I like C#, my Twitter handle is C#Fritz. When we wrote our announcements about VB a couple weeks ago, they wanted me to change my Twitter handle to VB Fritz. But I like VB too. I like VB as well. But I'm going to show C#. We do have templates for both, so you can choose Azure Web Job. It'll spin up and start a template for us that looks just like a console app, right? I'm inside of Program CS and static void main. I create a new job host, and then I say host run and block. And that is not an NFL running back. That is a job host. It's going to run and block the thread and sit there and listen, okay? While it's sitting there and listening, there are functions. Not that one. That one. There are functions over here that are running that will process and trigger when certain events happen inside of storage. In this case, there's a hint on the default process queue message templated method here that says when something is inserted into the queue called queue, fire this function, and we can trap what came down in queue inside of this message parameter. Okay? The text writer log on the end, that's kind of a default parameter that you can use to log information about the processing that you did inside of your web job. So very easy to get started with because it looks just like a console application. It actually runs kind of as a console application in the cloud. All right? So the real web job that I wrote is right here. So I have these functions. Let's close these up so you can actually see it a little bit. Resize thumbnail and resize to midsize. Okay? So here I'm using an attribute, a hint called blob trigger. And it's looking in the upload container at something with a name, right? It has the name in the curly braces. That tells Azure, hold on to this name, right? Whatever the name of this file is, hold on to it in that name variable. And it's going to pass me the contents of that blob as a stream, okay? Once again, stream processing, easy. We're familiar with this. I have another parameter coming in where I'm taking a blob in the thumbnail container, and I'm going to create a blob record with the name that came from what was in the upload blob container. Make sense? So if you upload a file called foo.jpg, I'm going to write a blob into the thumbnail folder, thumbnail container called foo.jpg. Make sense? So then it's all the same name, coding by convention. Cool? Makes sense? I didn't go off the deep end on deciding that? Okay. So inside here, I have a image resizer NuGet package that I've grabbed called image resizer. Zoom in there. There you go. Image resizer that will allow me to take a stream and resize it and do any kind of rotation, right? Because nobody takes a picture all the time in landscape mode. Some people turn it portrait, some people turn it whatever, right? We want to make sure that that orients appropriately. This library will automatically format that based on the EXIF orientation data that your phone emits. Make sense? So both methods are basically the same here. It's just they're passing in different resize settings. For the thumbnail, I have a max width and a max height of 200. JPEG, and I'm saying, yes, rotate that. Yes, sir? Can you? Okay, so the question is the ratio. I'm saying maximum size 200 by 200. Okay, so the question is what happens with the ratio of the image, even though I've specified max size of 200 by 200. So if it's portrait and it's right now 1920 by 1280, that 1920 will be docked to 200, and the 1280 will be reduced and scaled appropriately, which will be less then. So we end up scaling appropriately. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else have a question before I move on? Yes, sir. I have what? What happens if I have exceptions? Good question. There's a log. When the jobs are running, there's a console that runs, and it's right here. Let me zoom in on this a little. So here it is already out there and sitting inside of Azure running, and this one I want running continuously so that as files are uploaded, they get processed and made available. It shows me here's each time a function ran, and if there is an exception, so let me go into one of the functions and drill down into an exception here. Come on. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. If we load, show me this. It's not going to go back that far. All right. Each time it runs, there's a log, and it'll show you exactly what happened, exactly what it did. And look at this, I'm already killing the network here. And we haven't even gotten started yet. Wow. There's the log as it runs. Okay. So as exceptions happen, it'll drop them in here. And if I go back far enough, I did have some errors while I was testing this morning. What it will do is it'll mark the triggers as poison. Okay? So if you're familiar with queue processing, when you have a poison message, it'll try it a certain number of times, and then it'll discard it and say, I don't know what to do with this, and put it in another queue that you can clean up later. Okay? That way you don't stop processing altogether because you got a bad message in your queue. Make sense? Cool. So this is the web job console. This is where you can see what's going on. Thank you for the question. That got me to the next part of the demo. So I've mentioned that we can scale these things easily. So now I've got this web job hanging out there. It's running inside of a one processor web app, right? The web job runs in the same process as the app, the same machine. And if I need to scale that, I can do that very easily on my web app. So let me scale this up real quick, and then I'm going to get everybody in the room involved to see how much this thing scales. Sound like fun? We're going to let loose with our inner Kim K. Yeah? Now, I know this is being recorded, so future people that are listening to this, I'm sorry you cannot participate. Only my friends here in Chicago. Okay? Cool? So in my settings here, I'm going to come in, and I've got application settings. I've turned off the ability to upload. I wrote a little configuration option here. I'm going to turn that back on. Go ahead, save that. There it goes. And success. I'm going to come back over here. And I've got one small instance running this right now. I'm going to run this for the rest of this session. Let's go up to 4 cores. How's that sound? Select that. So I've got one machine with 4 cores. That's not enough for me. I'd like to have a couple more. So I'm going to come back into settings, and down here is, where is it? Scale. There it is. Now, typically when you're configuring scale for Azure, you can configure it on a schedule or when some sort of performance monitor happens, right? Some sort of performance event. You're pushing 80% processor usage on the web server. Start another. You've dropped below 50% processor usage on all of your web servers. Shut one down, okay? The idea that you want to have when you're using Azure services in the cloud is you want it running as hot as possible because that means you're paying less, right? If they're all running, if you've got 5 web servers out there and they're all running at 20%, you're paying a lot of money for unused resources, okay? So we typically want these things running hot. But I'm going to get everybody in here involved, so I'm going to force to a specific instance count, and I like 5. Why 5? Why not? So all I did was hit save, and it's starting up 4 more large servers for me, and it's going to deploy and make my web job and my website available on there. So those are coming online. You can see down here, I have 1 large instance running, and in just a second or two, we'll see that bump up, and there will be more of them out there running. So it's trying to scale to 5 right now. Now, while that's going, let's go to Ignite, Azure Photo, AzureWebsites.net. Look at this, I've already got people uploading. Fantastic. Better than that, it's already formatting thumbnails from my friends here. Fantastic. Keep it up, right? It's doing this constantly, okay? So if you want to bring up the lights in the back, so some of my friends, if you want to take a selfie and you want to upload it, browse to Ignite Azure Photo.AzureWebsites.net. Thank you. All right. Give you a couple minutes here to upload some pictures. So just browse to that site. It'll be formatted nice for you. Click Upload. You'll have to go into the hamburger menu. I'm sorry. I know people don't like hamburger menus. I used to call it the cheeseburger menu, and then all my European friends said, "You stupid American." Anyways, so you go in there, you can do Upload, and it'll take a picture with your camera and send it up. So some people taking pictures of the floor. Nice cheese snacks. There we go. All right. Looks like we've got a couple more coming in. I can refresh over here. I've actually got a long output cache on the actual website, so it might take a minute or so for more content to come through. So where's my friends there on the top left? Where are they in the room? There you are. All right, cool. So some more will come in just a little bit as they're being uploaded. But it's running continuously, right? The idea here is that when you put things in the cloud, you don't want to rely on one machine. You don't want to rely on one service that's processing things directly, right? You want to put in a little bit of a delay. When you distribute things, you're going to get scalability. You're going to get the ability to add more resources to it. But you're going to sacrifice timeliness of some of these things. And that's okay, all right? If you can wait a minute for a photo to appear, cool. If it needs to be immediate, okay, you're going to need to stand up some more resources. And you're going to need to get more aggressive about how these things process. No more? All right. We got another one. I saw somebody with a camera over there. You uploading? No Wi-Fi. I killed the Wi-Fi. Thank you. 4G's taking a little bit? Okay. So, dude, this web page is no longer available. Maybe to you. Works fine for me. Works on my machine. And I'm the one in the front of the room, so that's the one that matters. I'm going to let that go for a little bit, but I will, by the end of the session, shut that off so that, yeah, We're a family-friendly expo. Anyways, let's see. Where do I want to go from here? So we've set up a web job, and I've shown you how we can have this automatically run, format things, and it was easy to build, easy to add these things in, and get something out of it quickly. And it would be productive if we were doing, like I said, PDFs or something that was relevant to your business. Okay? I think we can bring the lights back down again. Thank you. So let me go back to the slides. We've done some of this now in web page not available. Let's talk about then something that's just as important as we start to scale these things up. Let's talk about diagnostics. How do I make sure that this is working properly, right? How do I make sure that there aren't errors? The gentleman over here brought up poison messages, and I've got exceptions that fire. How do I get into that and figure out what's going on and be able to troubleshoot some of these things? Well, I'm going to focus on 4 resources as part of this talk, okay? I'm going to talk about streaming logging. This is a way for you to get live messages, log messages, inside Visual Studio or inside a command prompt so that you can see exactly what your applications are doing live, okay? Remote debugging, right? How many people have done remote debugging in their own data center? Right? You're just connecting across your own LAN. Okay, I've got just a few people, not very many. Maybe a half dozen. So if you're just connecting across your own LAN into your data center, no big deal, right? It's all protected, nothing to worry about. But what about connecting halfway around the world to debug that entry in the data center in Brazil? Ooh, well, that gets a little bit fuzzy. I'll show you how we can do that. Application insights. This is a way for us to get information about what the processor is doing on your web server. A way for us to get information about what the browser does when they connect in and they start interacting with your web application. Okay? It gives us insightful information, statistics about what's going on. And the last one, staging slots. This is where you're going to be able to do things to test in production. Okay? I use air quotes there liberally. Staging slots allow you to create a copy, right? Another duplicate instance of exactly the same thing that you have configured for production so that you can deploy something in there, do some changes, see how it feels before you make that available as a production web application. So, let me go back into our demo and let's take a look at how we can do some of these diagnostics tasks around our application. And one of the first things I'm going to do before my credit card gets rung up is I'm going to scale down my web application. Is that a good idea? Yeah. Because website not available, right? Nope, still cranking here. All right. So let me scale down. I've got 5 instances running right now. Let's turn that back. And I'm also going to take this from an S3. Let's just come down to, there it is, S1. And I'm also going to go into my settings, and I am going to turn off uploads. Okay. And you can see the little notification thing here, success. Good. All right. So now, let me go over. So I've got 1 instance here, and I'm already on to an S1, and those 5 will go back down to 1 here in just a little bit. Let me go over to Visual Studio. So the first one that I want to hit is streaming logs. So this is real easy to do. We have a Server Explorer over here. When I'm logged into Azure, I can open the Azure node here, and I can go into in 2013, its app service is at the top. Inside of 2015 RC, it actually has web apps as a node. And I called it East US 2. When I right-click, I can jump right into View Streaming Logs. Okay? I mean, it doesn't get any easier. We put it right at your fingertips where you would expect to be able to view logs. So it'll start up and attach. And I can come in here to my settings and I can say, yes, give me the application logs and the web server logs. And it'll redo my connection here so that I get both sets of logs. And if people are still requesting that web application, hey, there they are. Hi, guys. Right, if I go to my About page, and if I come over to my dashboard, there we go, I got new runs. So see, I've got some that failed here. No problem, we can handle that later. So while that's going, if I look over here, now I get rich log information inside Visual Studio, particularly around the web, because I requested that. But I can also see things that are going on with the application. If I can get up there. Come on. Oh, there was one. So there's information about the web app. Okay? So I'm connected and I'm pulling information down and I'm getting all this rich log information inside Visual Studio. You can also do this at the command line with both our PowerShell and our cross-platform CLI interfaces. Okay, the cross-platform one is actually built on top of Node. I think it's if you do an npm install and I think it's Azure-CLI, you'll get the Azure tools written in JavaScript that run on all platforms. And then you can stream the logs with that tool as well. So streaming logs. Application insights. We can add application insights to our web application by right-clicking. I've already got it configured here, so it's already telling me open. But there will be items here that say add application insights. Let me add it to this one. There we go. Add application insights telemetry. And it's actually part of the file new project dialog. There's a checkbox that says add application insights. When you do this, it's going to set you up and say, where do I want to send this telemetry to so that we can record it? So maybe I want a new one. And when I say add application insights, it'll install a couple of NuGet packages, references appropriate to collect and transmit this information. So you don't have to configure anything. We do it all for you. And when that's done, it'll put some configuration files down, and it'll start sending information to Azure, to this application insights service, so that you can see what's going on. There's also some JavaScript you can put on your web pages so that it logs everything that happens with the browser. So there we go. It added a couple things to my local web one. I've already got it configured for the photo web. So let me go back in my portal here, and I've written it. I've moved that tile down here so that I can get to it easily, and it's going to show me some information about what's happening inside the application as everybody came through and requested. So we can see the browser load. My server response information didn't load quite right there, but I can see the information about the browsers that came through. I can click on that. So there's how long the request took. I can see the URLs that were requested. I can see the problems that happened, people who had JavaScript errors. I can drill into one of these, and it'll start to show me some information specific to that one page. But there's also an area here where I can take a look at the sessions of each person that connected.
I got a question.
Yes, question. Does the web application have to be hosted in Azure to use application insights? Can it be on-prem? Can it be in your data center? It can be wherever you'd like, and we're just going to be sending the telemetry to Azure for processing. Okay? Good question. Thank you. So I can see here's the different operating systems that people used to access the application. What's the oldest one we got here? Android 4.4, Mac OS X. Somebody has a Mac in here? Where's the glowing fruit? Ah, there we go. It's over here in the front. Okay. No, we like Apple here with ASP.NET. So you can see here's the people that are using the different types of operating systems, and I can drill into these and I can see the various browser versions. So if I go into Windows 8.1, a lot of people with Chrome. Nobody with IE? The IE users are, come on. I know. I'm an equal opportunity offender using Chrome 42. Maybe by the end of the session it'll be Chrome 43. Don't close it. And there was no Windows 10. Nobody's that adventurous running Windows 10 here at the conference. That's okay. All right. So those are some of the things that we can see in Application Insights. I'm going to skip forward to staging slots because I want to debug something that is not production, right? Has anybody made the mistake of debugging production or maybe your own machine while somebody else was browsing to it to test something? Am I the only one that's done that? I see one person. Two. Okay, we've got a small club here, guys. Fantastic. You've done well. It's the worst when somebody's browsing to it and all of a sudden it stops and you're trying to debug through something and it jumps over somewhere else. I'll answer the phone. It's okay. Tell them I said hi. So I want to debug not in production, right? This staging slots come in particularly handy when you've got new features that you want to test out before you deploy them, okay? Because when you try and do some sort of big bang deployment to production, how many times has it gone wrong? And you have to back it out? Okay, right? And it's the worst when you're doing that in off hours at 3 in the morning and you're doing that big bang deployment and it's 3:30 and you've got to back it out. 3:30 in the morning? Really? So staging slots helps with that because it lets you deploy to something production-like and then lets you back it out or swap it in without people really seeing it happen. So let me show you. So I'm going to go back to my home and I'm going to go into the web app over here. And when this comes up, hide my essentials. And I have deployment slots down here. Okay? I've got one already configured, but let's click in there. So I've got one configured -debug. So I can add one. And then it says, what would you like to name this, right? And then where should I get the base stuff that you want me to load up into this slot? So I can pull it from my production slot, Ignite Azure Photo, or I can grab it from that debug one that I've already allocated, okay? Effectively, the staging slots are just another instance of a website that you can deploy to and swap around, play with. In 2015, in Visual Studio 2015, it actually appears like that inside of the Azure Server Explorer. I'm going to say don't clone configuration for this and just create that. So we'll see one come up, another one come up here. There it is. So I've got Ignite Azure Photo Demo and it's already done. Now I'm going to close 2013 because I like the tooling in hey guys. Still the same people. Why didn't it load more? Oh, there we go. There's some more pictures. Hey, how you doing? Ooh, Chrome. Diet Coke. All right. So I'm going to run this now in Visual Studio 2015 because, like I said, I like the tooling here better for interacting with debugging and my staging slots. So I'm going to get into my Server Explorer. And under Web Apps, because it's not under App Services over there. And now I have, check that out, Ignite Azure Photo, Plane, Debug, and Demo. So it's clear that these are those staging slots, okay? So I don't accidentally deploy it somewhere that it shouldn't. So let me come through, and I'm going to right-click on my project, and I still have the same publish capability. But I'm going to publish to my debug slot, and I want to make sure that I push the debug version of my configuration. So let's publish that. So it's going to recompile, and it's going to go push all that stuff over there, just like if I was pushing to a production space. Okay? So web deploy, it's going to go through, send it up there, and make it available. And then I can attach and debug without affecting production. Yes, sir, in the back. In 2013, is it possible to target a specific slot? You can download the settings for it. It's not as nice as this, but you can still download that configuration publication settings and use those. Good question. It is possible, but like I said, it's not as nice as this. Now, check out how my web address changed. Okay, Ignite Azure Photo -debug. Okay, so I can clearly see when I go to the URL that I'm somewhere different. I'm not in production. Nobody's going to accidentally get here while they're navigating around production. Okay, so let me back out and go over. So let me put a breakpoint right here. Actually, let's put it after I get the blobs, or even better. Let me put the breakpoint. That's upload. There it is. Right there. Right after I get the container. So what I can do is right-click on debug and just say attach debugger. So now it's going to get the settings from Azure. It's going to configure and do some Harry Potter magic between the cloud and my workstation here on stage in Chicago. And we'll eventually get connected up here, and we should see the ability to hit that breakpoint. Eventually. This is the problem with Azure demos, especially after you just had your friend nuke the network. Oh, what did we do? Try it again. Well, that looked like it worked. So let's refresh. Come on, Visual Studio. Looks like Visual Studio is taking a powder on me here. Yes, I know it's busy. I'm busy too. I'm on stage, Visual Studio. No, really, I am. Come on now. It's not going to come back for me. Don't let it know I'm angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. There we go. Come on. Oh. All right, I'm going to try that one more time. And if it doesn't work, we'll call it a day on that demo. I know it's taking longer than expected. Maybe you don't know it's taking longer than expected, but we all know that. I don't think we're going to get this. And this might be because of how we're so friendly to the network in this room. But it does attach, and you are able to step through things. As people request. Yes, there's a question. You, sir. Do you have to flip a setting on the server to allow that? There is a setting in the portal to enable it. And it is, let me click into here. And when you click into the slot, it actually looks like another website sitting here. But by default, these should be configured. So there's all the connection properties. I believe remote debugging. There you go. Okay, so you have to turn that on, otherwise it won't allow it. So obviously in your production environment, you want to turn that off. Okay? Good question. Thank you. Anybody else with a question while we see if Visual Studio decides to return? Still going? No, I'm not going to wait for it. Yeah, I know. I canceled it. Oh yeah, now you're telling me I can't get to it. I'm sorry? Good question? No, it'll hit it anyway. I've been doing this earlier today. All right. I'm not going to wait on that. So I'm going to move on, and I want to get to the next demo that I want to show. API apps. API apps I showed in that initial slide, this is kind of the foundation that all of our apps are built on now, okay? APIs. Now, it's just a way for us to answer on port 80 or port 443, because we're using SSL, to send machine-readable content back and forth, all right? So this is a new app type, and you can upgrade your API to cloud scale. I like to say it takes your web API and puts it on steroids, okay? It turbocharges this because we're going to make it available to everybody in the world that can access your endpoint with some information called Swagger, okay? Swagger is an internet standard that does some definition around the function that the functions you're defining and the data types that you're exposing to make it all available inside of a definition file that actually looks a lot like the old WSDL and SOAP formatting. You guys remember that way back in the .NET 1 days, .NET 2 days? So it's a throwback to that, but the rest of the internet uses this besides .NET, ASP.NET. They use this to define their APIs when they communicate with things. So you end up with this simple access control to your API app through the portal, through the Azure portal, so you can see and interact with it, and you can actually publish clients for different languages to access your API app from the portal. We've got a public gallery of APIs, and we're in the midst of building galleries. We announced this last week at Build, so I can talk about it. We're building a way for your organization to have their own gallery of APIs that are specific to your organization, right? Maybe you've got an API you want to expose that helps with accounting, or that helps monitor things on in a warehouse, right, or on a production line. You can publish those APIs to just your organization when we deliver this functionality in the next, whenever it's done. I'm not allowed to say. So, a couple different things that we can look at there. I want to add to our demo now a Photos API so I can get that list of thumbnails as URLs without actually having to request it, okay? This way, I've got control over those URLs for the thumbnails, and it's not just somebody going and hitting my blob storage and pulling down and mining all of that information, okay? So I'm going to come back over to Visual Studio now that it's closed. I'm going to flip over while that's loading. There we go. So I'm back in Visual Studio 2013. And that's never good to see. But hey, we're all friends. So I'm inside my web application. I can make my web application that I wrote into a web API application, into a API app application, first by adding an API controller. So I added an API controller here to do a get and just go get the thumbnail blobs and return those strings. Okay, just a collection of strings, dump them out. We already know that web API, when it sees an IEnumerable of type string, it'll just output a collection of those strings in XML or JSON format, whatever it is that you decide to request, and say, that's what I want to use. So that's already taken care of. And if I run this app and request that, that's what I'll get. All right, so let's go API thumbnail, and there they are. Okay? Cool. No big deal. But I want to make that available to people as an API app, so that we've got control over the box that's running that, and we've got control over how people are receiving that. So I'm going to right-click on my project, and I'm going to come down to Add, and I can choose Add API App SDK. All right. Now, I can say automatic metadata generation. Where's the metadata for this app, this API coming from? We're going to generate that. So it's bringing down a couple of NuGet packages. That's an ongoing theme here. And it's putting them into my project. And you can see here, it wrote out a little bit of JSON about what we're going to deploy and create. Now, there's an API app JSON that it wrote out here. So namespace Microsoft.com, that's because I wrote it. Title of this is Ignite Azure Photo Web. And then see this API definition is at /swagger/docs/v1. Let me browse there and show you what is actually at that endpoint. Because I think this is where the rubber meets the road with this concept of Swagger and having a client that just works everywhere. So I have JSON formatter running inside my Chrome install here. And it defines that we support HTTP. The title is Ignite Azure Photo Web. And then I have these operations, thumbnail get. And it'll produce these types of formats, and it'll deliver an array of type string. Now, if I had something more complex in there that defined more than string, right? Maybe I'm delivering customer accounts or something, and there's first name, last name, and all those things. You would see those entries here. But I'm just outputting a collection of strings so that I can see the list of my thumbnails. So the real trick here now is I'm going to right-click and say Publish. And instead of publishing it as a website, I'm going to publish it as an API app. I'm going to create a new one, and we'll call this API. And I'll put it, let's put it here. Available to anyone, sure. This will create a new app. Yep, go. And where are we at? Is it publishing? I didn't see it go anywhere. Do that again. And I put it down here. Once creation is complete, you need to right-click and select Publish one more time to deploy your code. Right. Oh, it's over here. My bad. Yeah, because I had it running twice. Yep, it's already out there. All right. So now it's allocated the space, and now I have to publish again. And now I'm going to put this on. No, it's not there. I'm running out of time, I know. And I hear some people getting a little getting ready to go. Let me put it over here. Sure. Yes. There it goes. Creating the API app. Once this is allocated, I'll republish just the API app into that area, and then we'll be able to go into the portal and download the Swagger information to generate code appropriate for .NET. And this is taking longer than I expected. The network is not friendly when you're doing Azure demos, is it? All right. I don't want to cut off this demo, but I feel like I need to here because I'm just about out of time, and I want to make sure you get the resources links. Yeah, we're not going to get to it. My apologies. I have links to show you how to do this stuff. I'm going to publish them shortly after this session. My blog is on jeffreyfritz.com. There will be a post with links to the source code, to samples on how to do this stuff, videos on how to do some of these things. Portal.azure.com, that's the new Azure portal that you can go to and see and interact with your Azure resources. www.asp.net, that's where you can get the latest on ASP.net. If you go to asp.net/vnext, that's where you'll see all the cool stuff that we're working on ASP.net right now. I'm on Twitter. I am C#Fritz. Go out there. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, any questions you might have. Tweet me. I will respond to you. You can find me a little bit later today. I'll be upstairs at the web development booth on the conference floor. I've got a couple other slides here they want me to show. Free upgrade to Visual Studio Enterprise with MSDN, because it's not Ultimate anymore. It's now Enterprise. Learn more about this offer here. Please, please, please evaluate this session. I got to put a QR code up here. You guys done with pictures? Ready for me to go to the next slide? I've got a QR code. Where is it? Did it come up? There it is. For people who still use QR codes, scan that, evaluate. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. Tell me that, give me all fives, that you really liked my session. I've got another session on Thursday where we'll talk about ASP.NET 5. Common theme here, 555. Anybody else need to see this? Which links do you need? The resource links. There you go. There's your resource links. Thank you very much. You guys humble me. Thank you.